the fall is thinking about what we all can be doing together this fall. In light of ongoing concerns about COVID-19, Notre Dame recently announced that classes will resume in person on campus on August 10th and will end the week of Thanksgiving. Fall break has been canceled to limit student travel during the semester. St. Mary's and Holy Cross have also announced that they will follow a similar schedule. And also in an effort to limit the spread of coronavirus, student travel in the community will be limited and in-person community engagement activities will largely not be able to occur. The Center for Social Concerns will continue to fully support online and virtual engagement opportunities that students can complete from a safe distance. So with that in mind, we really wanted to start today with just a general conversation about what your plans are for the fall. So just because our students will be back in town, it does not mean that you will be interested in or able to work with them. So before we do anything else at the Center for Social Concerns or on campus, we wanted to just better understand where you are, what your plans are for the next 6 months. Will you be having on-site volunteers? Will you be changing services, either restrict or restore resources? Just let's talk about where we each will be for the next 6 months.
The organization I'm with, it's a nonprofit, a place to be me, children's dispensary, works with individuals with special needs, and a lot of them are immunocompromised. And so we launched virtual programs, back in March, like everyone else probably did. And our board hasn't decided too far out yet, but my guess would be, considering our population, that we will stay virtual likely through the end of this year and into next year, just because of our clientele. And currently we're using 2 Notre Dame students who are helping us with the virtual programs. And we would love to have, that help continue in the school year. And they're working on that as well as other projects. So virtual for us is fine.
Great. And Beth, she had the foresight to do what I was going to say, but hadn't yet. If you wouldn't mind just saying your name and what organization you're with when you start. So thank you. And anybody else? What else are the plans for the fall?
I'm Jennifer Wittenbrink Ortega. I work at the Robinson Center, and we're almost packed up. It's our last day here in our old building and moving to the new one tomorrow. And I also work at the Center for Civic Innovation. We are planning on actually starting in-person camps in July, and then we'll have programming in the fall. So yes, we really want to figure out how we can safely have volunteers with our kiddos going forward, especially once we start in the fall.
Congratulations about the new space, though. That's fantastic.
Exciting.
That's really exciting. Yeah. Yes. That's really great.
Hi, I'm Dan Ryan from Logan Center. I checked with the leadership team, making them aware that we were going to have this meeting today. And they said at this point, Logan has not made a decision about whether or not outside individuals will be able to participate in person in activities at Logan, but they indicated that more than likely they would not. Partially, or some of the reasons have to do with the same thing that Beth was talking about in her comments. So we kind of have to keep checking back to find out what's available. In terms of virtual, I'm not sure about that either. Most of our individuals don't have the technology to do virtual interactions with other people, so I'm not sure where we're at on that front yet either. Sorry, I don't have more conclusive information.
I don't think there needs to be any apologies about that from anybody, right? This is an ongoing thing that's changing on a regular basis, and we fully recognize that too, right? It's why I think these conversations are so important, because so many decisions are continuing to be made, right? And as we talk with one another, we can better understand how we can effectively make those decisions moving forward. So that's very helpful. Thank you, Dan.
Hi, this is Amy from the Girl Scouts. We will have a decision as to whether or not our troops can start meeting in July, sometime at the end of this month. And so depending on that decision will depend on what our fall is going to look like. They have not made any determinations as far as group size meeting locations. But if we are starting our online recruitment process, and we've been doing online programming for a while. So if we continue with that, I am anticipating having some assistance, or if there are any students who would be willing to conduct and become leaders and then do online programming with the girls via Zoom or other online methods, that's what we would potentially be looking for.
I work for the Roman language department, and every fall my students go to La Casa de Amistad to do their service learning. This semester, Rachel and myself are thinking about our students do a research about how this coronavirus crisis had affected the Latino community in different aspects, health, education, economic, employment, and to have some view of what is the following step that we can do to help the families.
I'm Christine Flowers, and I'm with Reins of Life. I'm the volunteer coordinator and program admin. We have been doing virtual programming for anybody that's interested off of our Facebook. And so we would probably look into trying to utilize some of the Notre Dame students to do virtual book readings, because we've been doing story times a couple times a week, and we've been doing online educational things, artwork. We've been doing videos about showing different things like the driving, how you hitch a horse and do driving, because that's one of our programs. We did a clue type of a thing where every day we had, oh, the bandit left us a clue, let's find where it was. So it was kind of trying to find ways to engage kids through our Facebook page with things that are kind of horsey related, and sometimes maybe not so much with the craft stuff and everything. So, and then if there's other clerical type things that we can work on that might be virtually done. So we are opening up slowly. We've been working on phases to get the writing back in place. So we're going to start with our more independent kids, so we can try and build on that to see what works, what doesn't, because while masks are still being required and everything, we're going to have to see how we can play, which of our kids can do that or not. Got to keep them safe, because once again, our children with disabilities, are immunodeficient and everything. So we're working on a bunch of different ways to engage and still get back into our lessons, and hopefully get volunteers back soon too.
So can I ask a question about that? Because you used a very interesting word, an important word these days. That's phases, right? So, I mean, what's been the threshold decision for how to know when to move to a new phase? Is it about, because I can imagine phases that are based on kind of content, right? As you're trying to figure out what content would be engaging. But I could also imagine phases based on, sanitation procedures, for lack of a better term, right? I mean,
yes,
there's so many different opinions and so many different recommendations going around. How do you make that decision about when you'd feel safe and what you would need to do to feel safe having people come back to your site?
Our executive director and board members and a couple other people on committee have been having discussions and kind of keeping in tune to what's been going on outside in the community, and how the governors and opening up and everything, and they've been watching to see how, is it gonna spike back up really bad, or has it been? And so we've kind of been working on phases where we've been all along social distanced. Our horses still needed care, so our feeders were still coming out, but they were asked to wear gloves and masks. And then somebody's in the feed room, somebody's out taking care of the hay, and then, you know, when you're out in the pasture, it's kind of already built in that, you know, you're distanced. For the ride, if we're getting our kids back on the program, we are talking about sanitizing. So like I said, that's why we're going to start with our more independent kids, because they would only take like a single volunteer to work with them with the horses. The kids will not be working directly with the horses, but they'll get the riding lesson. And then reins that they might use won't be used again until they get sanitized and dried. So we've built up equipment, or planned how we can use the equipment in stages without people reusing, without it being sanitized and everything. Their independent kids will be one rider at a time in a lesson, and that kind of thing. So there's very few, and there will be spread out. And then as we see what works and doesn't work, as far as, you know, can they work with the masks just for the breathing and spittle stuff, and the closeness that might have a horse leader with a rider, and then we'll see how those things work and how things shape up as settling in. And then we'll go into like, okay, maybe riders that need a horse leader and a sidewalker, where they only need to do an ankle hold or walking to do instructions, versus being right up on the kids. So we're just kind of seeing how things will go, and see what works, what doesn't work, and, you know, how we can. So each stage will be kind of, we've got some guidelines for what we want to do, but we'll see how it works. Kind of keeping in line with what is going on outside of our barn area.
Yeah. I never thought I'd be in such a situation where that attentiveness to public health around us, right, and having to see what works is such a key part of all of our lives right now.
We had sent out a email to our riders to see who was interested or ready to come back, and let them know that we would be doing things in a staging, you know, appropriateness. Mm-hmm. And we've even had some people say, we'll be back when there's a vaccine. You know, so if you don't see us, don't worry. Others are, you know, kind of, we'll be back maybe in the fall or something. So, you know, we're letting the riders and their families kind of help guide who's feeling comfortable enough also.
I'm Rachel Paraquin. I have a joint position with the CSC in Romance Languages. So I work with faculty like Maria Coloma and 4 others of us who teach the Spanish Community-Based Learning program. I just wanted to pick up on something that Christine had just said. Since so many of you are going to be continuing to work with virtual programming, I just wanted to make you aware that the Snipe Museum has been doing a lot of videos and a lot of different ways to engage virtually. And I just sent Dave the information, but you can also just look up on the Snipes website. Sarah Martin is the Curator of Education for Public Programs, and she works with K-12. I'm sure she'd be also happy to work with folks as appropriately from Logan or from Reins of Life, so it wouldn't have to be in a school setting. Okay. But they have lots of different ways to interact, and Dave Bescher, the museum director, has been doing a bunch of short videos and talking about different pieces of art. So those would be things that you could share forward with your clients or your students as you felt was appropriate.
Sounds cool.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat box. I want to remind everyone that is a resource there. So if you have anything you want to share with the group, or have a comment, or you want to make sure that a question gets addressed, you know, please go ahead and use that chat box. But I'm curious, so can we keep talking about this idea of how do you know, right? How do you know when it's safe to reopen and let people, how do you know when it's okay to go back to kind of, you know, quote unquote normal operating, or whatever that looks like?
So I'm Velshana Lucky with United Way of St. Joseph County. So one of the initiatives that we are working on in collaboration with a number of other organizations is to make sure there's a space that organizations like what we're talking about can find information to help them decide on the stages that they should go to. We are working on what's called COVID-19 Mobilizing Family Supports, which will be a place that people who work in the community can find out information, not just about supporting their families, but also about the disease. We're in partnership with the health department, and we're kicking off actually now a Mask Up Michiana, and so there'll be some websites so you can be able to go there as you're thinking about the different types of activities, because one of the things across the city the conversation has been is that there hasn't been consistent quality information connected to our local community. So we're trying to make sure that's an easy one-stop, and hopefully we'll have it up in a week. I don't know, we're moving really, really fast. But just know that it is hard. I've been talking with a lot of agencies who are starting summer programs, and it's just really hard. And so I've always encouraged people to see what the health department, our local health department, is recommending. And if you're in different areas, then you should get in touch with your health department. But just know that the community, we are trying to work on making it easy. And I also know the city and is looking into that as well. So we're trying to collaborate. I hope that's helpful.
I'm Pastor Carl Hetler from Broadway Christian Parish. Our homeless ministries have remained open this whole time. But in terms of our public worship on Sundays, that's been virtual for the past 2.5 months now. And so we're surveying members to find out what their comfort level is, to see who is open to coming back, talking with other churches that are already getting ready to open, and then also looking at some of the research that talks about, singing as something that seems to be a spreading of the virus if you have it. Airflow also for a lot of buildings like religious institutions that don't have good airflow. So there are some concerns that we have about gathering in person. So it's a mixture of surveying people to see what they're comfortable with, looking at best practices that others are doing, and staying current on the research.
So this is Deborah Stanley from Imani Unidad, and our services are going virtual. We do have a Notre Dame intern for this summer who's starting next week, who's going to help us to set all of those kinds of things up. And so one of the ways that students have participated has been in our groups in the past, and we are starting 2 new groups. So that will be available for students come the fall. And since we're starting now, we'll have time to work out all the kinks and see how well it works before August gets here. And so we too have been open this entire time, but very, very limited, one person at a time in the office by appointment. And we have somebody who sterilizes all day, every day, yeah. So everything is in place for us to proceed. Us thinking about reopening, right now that's off the table. We don't have a day. Again, we're looking like most people at the science, at the availability of testing, the contact tracing, and all of those things. I don't know if we'll necessarily have to wait for a vaccine, but if this virtual thing works well for others, we can become comfortable with that as well. And then for individuals who need one-on-one, we're still available for that.
Emily, I'm from El Campito Child Development Center, and we have remained open the whole time. And the majority of our decisions are made by our state licensing agent, which is great because it takes the pressure off of me to know what I'm doing in the building. So we don't allow parents to come in anymore. They drop their kids off at the door. We take temperatures at the door. If you do have a fever, you're up for 72 hours until they're able to come back without any fever reducing medication. And yeah, so we're out until at least July 5th in terms of those restrictions. And licensing said that at that time they would reevaluate what our next steps are. So we try our best to socially distance, but that's not very well done with 3-year-olds. So we just pray a lot that nothing happens. So
Yeah, I think we're all there with you. Lots of prayer for sure.
I'm Christina McGovern with Youth Service Bureau, St. Joseph County. Like Emily, we follow guidelines set by the Department of Child Services. And so our restrictions will be dependent on what they lift for us. The youth shelter, street outreach all have remained open throughout this crisis, as our Young Moms programs. So we just had to look at ways to be creative and follow guidelines with all of those programs. The shelter right now is, we can't have any visitors. The youth who are at the shelter can't have their families come in, so following guidelines. So we'll just have to wait and see how things go. But all the programs are continuing. We're planning on moving forward in October with one of our fundraising events, but it lends itself to social distancing. And we've utilized volunteers that have had a lot of students come out and help with that. So again, we'll just kind of have to wait and see.
Well, this was, we've structured this conversation a little bit differently, but we do always like to have some small group conversation, and I would still like to try and do that for at least 10 minutes or so. So I've got everyone sorted into breakout rooms here, and I hope that based on this conversation, if we could just, in those small groups, talk for a few minutes about something that you're optimistic about for the next 6 months. What's something that you're looking forward to, you think is going to be a positive development over the next 6 months? And then what role, if any, do you see local university and college faculty, staff, and students playing in your organization over the next 6 to 12 months? So we often talk about Notre Dame, but we are fortunate to have with us today individuals from IUSB and Holy Cross, I think St. Mary's as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open those rooms up. Encourage you to just have a conversation about those topics, right? Something that you're looking forward to, and then also something that you are a way that local university and college faculty, staff, and students could be playing in your organization for the next 6 months. And I will open those rooms now, like I said, and then send those questions again through a message to the groups. So, and also, it's a great time to just get to know one another too. So, I encourage you to introduce yourselves to each other. Well, welcome back, everyone. I hope that was an enjoyable conversation that you were able to have and productive. We always love to just round out these conversations with just kind of an extension of the conversations you were just having. So I would love to just circle back to those two questions. So if anyone would like to share something that they're optimistic about, looking forward to, and then ways that you might think about if any roles that university and college faculty, students, and staff might be playing in helping you achieve your organizational missions over the next few months.
So in our small group, we first there was this whole admission that we are people, but kind of optimistic and trying to be excited about this new way of doing things, like taking the Take 10 curriculum and taping it, videotaping it, putting it online, and still making it available for people. And so having these students who have been trained in this curriculum, delivering it, via video. And then, like Madeline was saying, taking this time to just revamp everything from head to toe, looking at stuff. And so, so trying to be excited about moving into this whole new technology life. And then thinking about, then how do we evaluate it? Here's this whole new community-based research project now to look at, is this working? How is it working for folks? And then keep staying abreast of it so that if we need to make some adjustments, we can. So, yep, that's what we talked about.
I was in Deborah's group as well. I'm Madeline with the Center for the Homeless. I didn't get the chance to introduce myself the first time because I got a phone call. But yeah, we just talked about, all three of us, we hate technology. But the other thing, I think it's a great chance for, and I've said this since the beginning of March, rather than looking at it like, oh, I don't have volunteers, like I could be out of a job. Looking at it is more of a chance to just dream big and do things that I always use the excuse of, I don't have time to do this because I have volunteer groups. Well, I can't use that as an excuse now, to just take time, really look at what volunteers and community-based learning looks like at the Center for the Homeless, and to dream big and move the program forward for the next generation.
Oh yeah, will there be any social concerns fair or activities night? That was a question as well.
Yeah.
Where will these volunteers come from if we don't have those kinds of gatherings?
Those are really great questions that we were talking about this very week, trying to figure some of those things out. But a lot of that's going to, of course, depend on what the university decides is allowable on campus, right? So our hands are a bit tied at the time being, trying to figure that out. But you can be sure that we will be shouting it loud from the rooftops if we're able to do things like that this year. We hope to, and even if we can't, right, we'll do other things, right? We're all getting more familiar with Zoom than we ever wanted to be. I think I'm ordering some special glasses so my eyes don't keep getting wasted staring at screens all day. But we're working on that. That's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up, Deborah. Other thoughts?
Emily and I were in a group together, and one thing we talked about was, and that I'm optimistic about, is the fact that now that we've learned to do things virtually, we can offer things virtually in the future, even once we get back to normal. Like right now, we've picked up some clients that live very far away who may not be able to travel to us all the time. And so, there will be programs where there'll be opportunities for them to engage virtually while most of the, clients are in the room together. We can have a setup where there's a monitor and they can see what's going on, what we're working on. They can work on it in their home. They can, communicate and connect with everyone in the room. And when we have snow days, we can still have an activity because we can just do it, virtually again. So we've learned something. Like we didn't ever think to try this when we had snow days. We just canceled. So we have new opportunities to reach more people. So we're trying to look at the positive there.
I had the privilege of being in the group with two Marias. And so I actually looked up their name: friendly, outgoing, and loves to make connections. And so both talked about, the excitement of seeing students, hopefully face to face, and the beauty of there's these goals as well as challenges, and kind of trying to figure out how to learn from one another and be excited about the beauty of that. And I talked about resilience, that is what resilience is about. We have to have something that we're struggling with to get stronger. And another phrase I'd like to say is never waste a good crisis, Winston Churchill. And so just really, we spent a lot of time talking about the possibilities and the opportunities, the connections between COVID-19 did not go away when the fight against racism came, and that fight didn't wait for COVID-19 to pass, and how in a lot of ways this is an opportunity to really connect us and inspire us to listen more closely. We're there is a commonness between us that we haven't had before, so we're all learning together and learning from one another. And so that was the focus of our conversation. I hope I highlighted it well.
It does sound like maybe a 1960s music group, though. Belshana and the Marias. We've got a possibility there.
Might just add, this is Maria Schomer from Holy Cross College and Our Lady of the Road. Belshana already spoke a little bit to this, but she also talked about the opportunity to really listen to each other's stories and to student stories and our guests' stories. Because we have so much shared experience right now, of course, it looks different in so many different contexts and all that, but the opportunity to really be gentle with and listen to one another is something that really stood out to me from what you had shared, Belshana.
So I was also, curious about just kind of, what can we be doing better as higher education partners? How can we be better supporting you right now? And as we move into fall, right, we're clearly getting back a key resource on our side with the students coming back to campus and more than anything, just getting their attention back more fully, right? Because we're still talking about doing things from a distance, but they're going to be thinking about us and about this work again. What can we be doing better to support you and to collaborate with you, to be better partners?
Okay, I'll chime in.
Oh, please do.
From our perspective, I think one of the things to keep in mind that we're always so appreciative of the partnership with the university, and I think one of the things we actually learned, we had a group of MBA students do their experiential time, grad students with us recently, and the thing that I appreciated the most is this particular group really listened to the reality of where we are as an agency. And I think a lot of nonprofits, experience this as well, that although we, again, are so appreciative and love to have, discussions with the university, with the students, sometimes those discussions tend to be more academic and theoretical as opposed to where we are in reality. And so I think, as you're working with students, keeping in mind that even though they might be thinking, big globally and big picture, and we want them to continue to do that, to also be very aware of the reality of where the smaller nonprofits are and the type of help that we might need. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I muted because my 9-year-old daughter just bounded through the stairs, so I didn't want to be clattering around. But no, it makes complete sense. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else like to share about that? How we can better support you right now?
I think in general, everyone is in like a survival mode or just like waiting. And so I don't have any suggestions on how any higher education can support us more. I know that we have been so blessed by days of service to consistent volunteers to, interns to practicum students. It's just been so great. I'm so grateful that we live in this kind of nest of really great colleges with community engagement, backgrounds. I didn't have that experience in college, and I think it's like others have said, it's such a great experience for them to go into the community and say, oh, this is the reality, not just what I'm reading in a textbook. So for me personally, unfortunately I can't allow any volunteers in right now anyways. So it's unfortunate to be waiting. I guess I don't have any expectations because I can't receive anybody anyways, and it feels so sad when someone calls and says, what can we do to help? I'm like, you can water some flowers outside. That's great. But we're when you do it. So, but I think I don't know if anybody else feels the same way. They're just in a holding pattern waiting.
Yeah, but I also think Deborah brought up a really good point about when you're writing grants and they want you to be able to give them the data, that is going to be a lot more difficult to figure out when you're doing things virtually and not seeing them and really seeing their progress. That's a whole other bag of worms I hadn't even thought about the repercussions of, and really don't want to think about at the moment. But if someone could figure that out, that'd be great.
And that's great feedback, right? Because we've got, especially talking about data, right? We've got a embarrassment of resources. Like we don't have some things, we definitely don't have some things, but some things we've got a lot of resources on. So we'd be more than happy to do that. So I think just two things I want to make sure that we know here before the end. One is that I hope that you will all feel empowered at all times to tell us no, right? If it does not work for you, if you cannot host anyone, if anybody comes to you from the university, from any of our institutions and says, we'd like to partner with you, if it really doesn't make sense for you, please just say no. We would far prefer that, because we do want to be partners. We don't want to be making you, especially at this time, to have to create something just to satisfy our interest in working on something. And the second thing is that, we've had some great conversation here today. I think, though, we still would love to give you an opportunity to just kind of say thumbs up, thumbs down. We're anticipate being able to collaborate or not, right? And maybe this is something we'll wait a couple of weeks on, but I might just send you a very, very short, as in 2-question short survey. So you can just tell us, just very briefly, yes, no, we're going to be able to work with you. Or maybe yes in person, no in person, yes from a distance, no from a distance. Kind of a way of just communicating to us if you have any interest and capacity in working with higher ed for the next 6 months or so, and then try and touch base again. So we did that in one version earlier this year as we were just starting to go to these stay-at-home orders. I think we'll just revisit that if that's okay with everyone. But yes, please, if you have anything in particular you want to talk about, that's what these sessions are for, but obviously we have a topic, and if we're not addressing something that's of interest to you, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to us. We're more than happy to have a small group or a one-on-one conversation over Zoom or a phone call. I've been told that I still have a telephone, and so we can use that too if that's useful for you, if that's what you would prefer. But I think that we just want to say yet again, especially in this context with everything going on right now, that we just so appreciate the work that you do. We recognize that we value it. We recognize that it's work that we cannot do, and especially could never do on our own. And we want to contribute to that work and be a partner with you. So please, let's maintain the level of communication. Please don't hesitate to say no, but also don't hesitate to reach out if you want to explore a potential partnership or work, or if you're just looking to connect with someone on campus, please, think of the folks who are in this conversation today. I think I can speak for all of us in higher ed that we would love to be the front door, the first contact, and we would be more than happy to help you find someone else on campus if we're not the people to talk to. We are just about at 1 o'clock though, and I want to make sure to respect everyone's time. So as always, we'll kind of say a very, very heartfelt thank you. And if anyone needs to leave, feel free. And if anyone would like to continue the conversation for a little bit, feel free to stay as well. Otherwise, I hope that we will see you next week on the 11th for our conversation about racial justice and community university partnerships. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your contribution.